I hated being photographed. I used to dread looking at my pictures till the age of 30. Dread.
Was that a moment of freedom for you where you were like, I call myself the girl with the broken neck?
I am such a multitasker. You know, I'll be climbing the lift, carrying a lot of stuff, but still be messaging someone to get one plumber to come to the house. That was me. I'm trying to tone down because I'm trying to drive myself less crazy. I graduated class of 2005. Mark Zuckerberg graduated the same year. If I want to compare myself, I have a perpetual recipe for unhappiness.
What about surrendering yourself?
वो थोड़ा मुश्किल है. I think a certain amount of money enables happiness.
There is this view that money matters should be handled by men.
I mean, I keep saying, ladies, if there's one thing you shouldn't outsource in your life, it's this. This whole women being criticized for crying in the office is totally overrated. Men get aggressive in the office. They use some unparliamentary language and people forgive it. Freedom is to live a life where you don't worry about what would other people think. She's moved on from log kya kahenge. She's found her zone. She's working hard, she's achieving. She's doing it with peace. My hashtag is Nari in a Sari. Sab pe bhari.
Sab pe bhari. What does it truly mean to be free? Growing up, we are made to believe that freedom can be earned with success, with stature and a paycheck. But what if freedom is something more personal, more internal? Welcome to Finding Freedom, a show that explores a deeper sense of freedom that comes from within, not driven by wealth or status, but a power to choose your pace, your path, and your purpose. Through intimate conversations with them, we hope we can inspire you to find your version of freedom. Our guest today was born with complications. Her story came to be known of that of the girl with the broken neck. But from rejection and pain, she built resilience. From doubt, she found clarity. And eventually, she discovered something deeper. That is, freedom. Radhika, wonderful to have you on Finding Freedom. You're our first guest. And as I think about your journey, you know, you've been through so many ups and downs. You've been through your own personal challenges, your own setbacks, your own personal insecurities. And, you know, you've overcome all those challenges to arrive at a stage where you don't only fully embrace who you are today, but you've come into your own. So let me just start off this conversation by asking you, what does freedom truly mean to you?
I think freedom is to live a life where you don't worry about what would other people think. So much of your life, especially in an Indian conditioning, is set up to think, log kya kahenge? मैं ये करूँगा, लोग क्या कहेंगे? मैं ये करूँगी, लोग क्या कहेंगे? I think if you can get past लोग क्या कहेंगे.
How do you get past लोग क्या कहेंगे?
It's a long journey. So you remember when this whole Coldplay buzz was happening? So like everybody I know was going for Coldplay concerts. So all my friends were talking and their college friends, and they're like, so Radhika is quiet. When are you going? So they were asking me because everyone was like, I'm going Saturday, I'm going here, this, DY Patil. Like, I'm not going. So someone was like, why are you not going? I was like, because I don't like the music. I only listen to Hindi music.
That so resonates with me. Yeah, anyways.
But I have always been like that. But I didn't have the confidence to say that 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I would have faked that I'm going to the Coldplay concert or gone to it and paid the money even though I have no interest in the music.
And then Instagrammed it.
And then Instagrammed it. Like I used to deny being a vegetarian. I have taken a patty out of a non-veg hamburger as a 13-year-old, thrown it and eaten the hamburger despite being a vegetarian because I thought it was very uncool to say I don't eat something. I don't do something. I have faked learning how to drive. So from that to this is only a journey.
Yeah, it is a journey.
It's a journey.
And so at what point did it change for you? I want to understand. Was there a particular experience? Was it a particular phase? Was it a milestone in your life where you feel like, you know what, I've made my point. I don't need to prove anything to anybody.
So it's never overnight. I think these kind of things are rarely overnight. But there was a catalyst. So when I did that, I've been a reasonably private person. I generally dislike people. And, you know, very, very limited number of friends, not going out types. But when I did the girl with a broken neck talk, I unintentionally got thrown into public limelight. And a lot of people started connecting to me because of all the differences, imperfections, etc. And I remember the person who I worked with on the talk, he told me, this will change your life from an external world point of view. And I was like, come on. He's like, people will take selfies with you at airports. I was like, dude, nobody takes selfies with finance people at airports. But it made a big change to me internally. So it was the beginning of a journey of self-confidence.
Was that a moment of freedom for you where you were like, I call myself the girl with the broken neck?
Yeah,
Who does
and by the
that?
way, I agreed to the title. I agree with them when they were debating how to title the talk. Someone suggested a girl with a broken neck. Because I remember someone when I was 12, 13 calling me that. And I was like, yeah, why don't you call her a girl with a broken neck? You know, like, you want to call yourself on? I was like, yeah, yaar, kar lete hain. Because when I came off stage, 500 unknown people and the energy around me, that told me something special had happened.
Yeah. By the way, when I saw you, met you for the
Yeah.
first time, I did your first interview,
You did my first ever interview.
TV interview, right?
Yeah.
In my previous life. And I didn't think that you were any different from anybody
Yeah.
else. But internally, the way we look at ourselves and our insecurities are different. So tell me about your childhood, tell me about your journey and how you saw this whole thing
So
as
I
part of
had a
your...
super secure childhood in the sense that, look, my father was a diplomat, career diplomat. He moved countries every 3 years. I think shifts are generally very difficult for children. You know, this was not an era, I sound very old, of Facebook, etc. So I don't have school friends, by the way. I just don't have school friends because my father moved every 3 years. And every time you enter a school system, and now I'm a mother and I think about my own son, you know, you're already entering an alien environment where people have been there for so long. And then you're this new, like, Indian kid who's attending like an American school in Nigeria, which is like out of student of the year before Karan Johar dreamed up student of the year. So I grew up with insecurities about my looks in general. Like, I hated being photographed. I still secretly hate being photographed.
Okay.
Now I'm okay with how I look in pictures, but I used to dread looking at my pictures till the age of 30. Dread.
Really?
Dread.
What made you comfortable?
The whole talk the fact
I think the talk changed you.
the talk just made me super comfortable. I was like, okay. So now it's funny, people will tell me on a picture, because I have a slight squint in the eye also. People
See,
will,
I'd never noticed that.
You know,
unless you told me,
By
I
the
would
way,
never notice it.
I didn't know I had a squint prominently till some journalist put up an article on mutual fund CEOs with our picture, and there are 5 male CEOs in me, and some guy commented on my squint. And I was like, yeah, I guess I have a squint in pictures. It's not like the other 5 guys look like Hrithik Roshan, that you have to comment on only my squint. But then
That's
I
fair.
told the guy on Twitter, at that point it was Twitter, I was like, I still think I'm beautiful, so let it be.
Does that limit your sense of freedom?
Not anymore. I mean, 3-4
But
months.
for most people, it would, right?
most people,
women.
it takes
I
a
think
jo-
it's a struggle.
Most women struggle with, oh, I have a skin issue, I have a hair issue, I have a height issue. I'm like, screw it, man. Everyone has an issue. I remember Neeta Lulla called me 4-5 months ago to do a shoot for her. And she's like, I want to do a shoot with corporate women. And I was like, dude, you're Neeta. You do shoots with Aishwarya Rai. I was like, why would you want to shoot with someone who's a corporate woman who has all these so-called imperfections? I'm not the thinnest, etc.
Hanji.
She's like, let's do it. And that, by the way, was another super one for me, because it was like full body positivity. Like, wear what you want, do what you want, and you look beautiful.
Yeah. So after having seen so much, experienced so much, having had such a global exposure, coming back to India, finding your success, finding your identity, I can carry on, having lived the journey that you have, what is your key metric of success today?
I want to be happy with the work I do, and I want to be happy with the life I live at home. I want to do work that creates impact, and I think different people can have different definitions of success, and I have learned as I'm getting older not to judge. For some it can be money, for some it can be power.
For most, it is money.
For most it is
Right?
money.
They always talk about money, fame, power.
Yeah.
Pick your
So for me
sequence.
it's impact. For me it's large scale impact, and I think that defines my choice of career, that defines my choice of hobby, it defines a choice of much of what I do. So for me it's impact. Of course money is important, but am I going to change
How
what
important on a scale of 1 to 10?
7 or 8. So it's not 10. Will I change what I do? Will I pick something where I'm miserable every day, even though I'm making 10 times the amount of money? I will not do it. Because I've learned life is a limited innings game. So I want to have time to live it.
And what
fully.
about happiness and money? That equation?
I think a certain amount of money enables happiness. You know, you have the house that you want to have, you have the comforts of day-to-day life. So I think a certain amount of money is important. But does only money enable happiness? Clearly not. I think you need to find, and you know, I interact with people in a very privileged part of the world. I think what enables happiness is leaving log kya kehte hain, leaving this whole thing around comparison, because there's no end to money, right? I mean, I graduated class of 2005, undergrad in the US. Mark Zuckerberg graduated the same year. If I want to compare myself, I have a perpetual recipe for unhappiness. Life is not black and white. I'm increasingly becoming a big fan of middle of the road. So, of course, you need to aspire. Yeah? Without aspirations, you know, you won't push yourself hard enough.
True.
But you have to have a sense of what is enough.
So does that come with age, or can Gen Zs jump the gun and be like, in our 20s, we've arrived and we can live that sort of life?
I hope they can. I wasn't able to. I was a nervous wreck in my 20s. But I do believe this generation of Indians is probably going to do a better job than we did. I just hope that... See, there's a core set of things that I think still matter in life. Discipline, hard work, purana gadha mazdoori, all of that. I hope this Gen Z doesn't forget that.
Yeah, true. So let's take this conversation inside.
Come.
Is this a ritual?
This is a routine. So
Every single day?
every single day, sometimes I grind also, and then I grind for a few days. Some days, you know, it's already ground, but one makes the coffee, one takes the cup, and in better weather, we sit on the balcony, and me and my son snuggle and we make coffee.
Do you think this is the time when you actually feel completely in sync with yourself? Or what is the activity or the time of the day when you are with yourself, one with yourself?
So I'm not a morning person in the sense that I don't wake up at 4, 5 in the morning. I'm lazy like that. I wake up at 6:30, and I don't have this curated routine of meditating and like taking 2 breaths. There's a lot of chaos, and I love it in the morning. It's beautiful. So I wake up at 6:30, and my son comes to our room, and he's like, "Mama, snuggly bugly time." So that's like, I hope that lasts. So that goes on for like 20, 30 minutes. Then one comes here, I make the coffee, and we go out and sit, or we sit in. If it's too hot, we do the breakfast together. I really enjoy getting ready also. Like the whole wearing my sari, finding my jewelry, just like that little 20, 30 minutes. I think my getting ready room is one of the luxuries of this house. It just makes
It's therapeutic for you?
It's very therapeutic. It's beautiful. And I just like picking the sari and finding the jewelry, and I don't wear very much makeup, but whatever that 20, 30 minutes is, and till 8:30 when we all rush out for work, it's a very nice time, you know.
What is the activity that you enjoy by yourself on your own?
Listening to poetry, listening to old songs, poetry, writing, reading, so that kind of stuff, reading fiction.
What if somebody told you, Radhika, Radhika, that sounds really boring?
But I don't read finance books. I read fiction books. And it's boring for you, it's fun for me, right?
Yeah. The reason I brought in that angle of people saying, Radhika, that sounds just boring, is because at every step in our lives, right? Whenever we want to be ourselves, people will come and say, oh, but this doesn't work, but this is not how society is. And there's so many naysayers.
It's your life, yaar. Anyway.
But how do you counter the naysayers? Because the naysayers are not outsiders. They're your family members sometimes, your uncles and your aunties and your cousins, and everybody has something to say about the life decisions that you're making.
If you are an Indian woman especially, and especially after you become a mother, everybody has a bloody opinion on everything you do.
Radhika, I think even before that.
No, but after you have a kid, like from how much you breastfeed your child to what you eat yourself to how you're raising them to what you dress. I have had women come to me at women, not men, come to me at airports and say, "पहले Shark Tank में देखा था तू बहुत भारी थी, अब पतली हो गई."
Oh my!
It's so funny, and I know it's cute and harmless, but it's hilarious. So everybody has an opinion. I'm like, if I like your opinion, I'll say thank you. If I don't, I'll move on. मैं क्या करूँ?
How do you react to opinion that is like uncalled for, unsolicited opinion?
You know, If it's very rude, then I will address it because I don't take rude things. Otherwise, I'm
Do you
like,
get
just-
angry?
I get less angry. I used to get very angry. Like 6-7 years ago, when I had sold the company, I was like this hot-headed entrepreneur.
Forefront when you sold it.
Yeah. I used to have a sign on my desk that said, "Don't blow up." Because I would get angry and I would get angry on emails and write angry emails. And if you're getting angry, written form is the worst form to get angry on because it stays for
But
posterity.
where did that come from? Because you worked in the US, you worked in McKinsey,
that
I
has no-
believe you can't the whole thing of toxic culture and writing, showing
No, so it
anger.
didn't come from there. It came from my entrepreneurial stand. Because think about it here. You're 23, 24-year-old young woman trying to make it in India. Entrepreneurship is so tough. You've never really lived here. You face a lot of struggle, rejection. आप तो बहुत young हो, आपका तो, you're dealing with huge lifestyle downgrade. So you become very agitated and angry. So that's where it came from me. And I felt like the world was out to destroy me and antagonize us. So I had all these things. And it took the first few years at Edelweiss to calm me down. Like I cried in my first performance review because I thought the whole system was against me. So I was an angry person. I've toned down a lot. And especially after motherhood, I am completely toned down. So my husband and my family still think I get angry, but I get angry a lot less.
Not less. Okay.
Okay, I'm
Let's
gonna carry
grab
this.
a cup of coffee and
Let's walk.
okay. Who's mentored you through your career? Also your personal life. Who've been your key mentors?
So it's not been one individual. I think, good or bad, I haven't had the fortune of a single guiding force throughout my career. But there have been lots of individual people. And my approach really has been that there is something good to learn from most people that you work with. And I have had, one of my first bosses at Edelweiss was one of the finest negotiators and such a great statesman that I actually went to him and I said, "Yeah, how do you do this?" And so that's my approach. I go to someone and I say, "I think you're really good at this. Like you are the master of people management or crisis management. Will you teach me this?" And so I've kind of eked out mentorship that way. And these days, I'm the recipient of lots of emails and people write, "Can you be my mentor?" And I find it very scary. I'm like, yeah, that means taking on so much load in someone's life. But going to someone for specific advice and specific wisdom, I've had lots of those people.
How emotional are you, Radhika? After having achieved so much, because that's another tag women get. Or if you push her too much, then she start crying.
No, but I find this nonsense, Yavuz. I am a very emotional person. I've become...
How easy do you cry?
I cry. Once a year, I'll have one meltdown in the office. Now, not everybody will see it. Before, it used to be once in 3 months. But I will get emotional. And 5-7 people who know me closely know that day she's emotional. I think this whole women being criticized for crying in the office is totally overrated. I come from capital markets. Men get aggressive in the office. They use some unparliamentary language and people forgive it. Saying कि moment में हो गया तो थोड़ा emotion दिखा दिया. What is this? In fact, I've gotten told early in my career that you are this very empathetic, emotional type leader. This will hurt you. And then I've also gotten told, no, now this is what works for you. So I don't think you can change your core style and who you are.
Over the years, how have your emotional patterns evolved?
I have learned to be a lot more patient. So fundamentally by nature, I'm very impatient. I'm the kind of person who, if you're going to an airport...
Looking at you, one can't tell, by the way.
No, I'm very impatient. And it's worked for me because, it's kept me edgy, it's kept me agile. But I'm the kind of
Get
person...
things going.
Yeah, if it says 13 minutes on Google Maps and I'm running late for a flight, I will keep staring at the Google Maps. And like, if the car has stopped and there's a tiny bit of traffic, I'll ask my driver, traffic queue. I'm that impatient. I'm very, very impatient. But I'm learning to calm down. I'm learning to get a lot more patient. I'm learning to enjoy moments, which has taken a lot of time. So I am such a multitasker because I've been so busy that in one moment, like, I'll be climbing the lift, carrying a lot of stuff, but still be messaging someone to get one plumber to come to the house. That was me.
Which is fine.
But
That's
I'm-
efficiency.
Yeah, but I'm trying to tone down because I'm trying to drive myself less crazy as I get older.
Do you think it comes from some deep-rooted fear, like these emotional patterns, this edginess, is something like I'll miss out, you know, the FOMO feeling, something, what do you think is the crux? Because I feel like a lot of us are very similar in that sense.
Mine came from just being too busy and having too much to do. You know, all my life I've lived a very, very full existence. So with a full existence, people ask me, how do you manage it all? I manage it because I'm efficient, but I'm also very impatient. And so I said, impatience is also a very, very good thing because I'm one of the most efficient people you will meet. Decision making, doing something, I'm very, very fast.
Helps with time management also.
And I mean, I'll be modest in saying this, I'm a killer time manager. I'm a killer time manager. Like my mom says, I am a killer time.
You're so humble about it, Radhika.
I say only thing I will not be humble about. So I may not be a great
Please give me some lessons. I'm terrible.
a killer time manager because I don't have time. So I have had years where I've done Shark Tank, being MP vice chairman, gotten this house done, and also been pregnant
Wow.
and run a company. I mean, I have done,
That's a tall order.
yeah. So I have had most of my years are like this because I am brutally time efficient, and I've been like this since I was a kid. Like I make schedules, I make plans.
You're organized.
I know that I hate doing things last minute. So I know if there's a board meeting in a month, the preparation will start a month before. By the week of the meeting will be totally clear. I don't do last minute stuff. It agitates me.
So then, if I were to ask you, what is your greatest fear today? What would you say?
About myself, getting complacent. And I keep telling my team this too, right? What happens with a certain amount of success, if you start from here and you grow to here, and I don't believe I've achieved even 30-40% of my potential, but the journey can be so fast that complacency sets in. And I think the opportunities ahead of me are very, very vast. I think people around me have much more faith in what I can do than sometimes I do in myself. But I think the risk of getting complacent. And the second risk is of just not enjoying what I've earned, not financially, enough, just not enjoying myself enough. So I took a promise, I turned 40 a year and a half ago, that I'm going to enjoy myself more. Because I'm like this person who's always running, this cheap kid who's like looking for discounts. She's like, just get over it. Start enjoying yourself.
What about surrendering yourself at this stage to a lot of things that are out of your control?
वो थोड़ा मुश्किल है, although I think I've gotten better. So there's this.
Have you ever surrendered yourself? Chodo. You know, I learned something from
Very
a very
rarely.
prominent leader, the power of procrastination. And I was like, the power of procrastination? Procrastination has such a negative connotation to it.
I wish I could do this, but I don't. You know, whether it's a family vacation where I'm going with my extended family or anything, I'm always the driver. I'm not the passenger. And my father has brought me up saying, we have to be drivers. We have to not be passengers.
Okay.
Thoda sa now when I'm around, he's become a passenger and he really enjoys being a passenger because I'll take control of the passports at the
But you're
airport.
not going to wait for another like 10, 20, 30 years to get to that phase,
so
no?
it's very rare in life. I have a couple of friends, a couple of YPO friends. Sometimes I go out with them and they're doing the planning and I'm just surrendering to it. It may be 5% of my life or 2% of my life, and it's incredible because 95 to 97% of my life, I'm being the responsible one. And
you
some
don't
days I
plan on-
get tired of it.
Yeah, you get tired of it,
I
but you
get
don't
tired of
plan on changing that ratio. So if I goes to 20%, 30% surrender, then 40%, in your 40s itself.
I should, but I haven't been able to. I really haven't been able to, but I need to. I need to know what it means to just be a passenger.
If you've learned how to deal with rejection, then I'm also sure that you found strength in coping with setbacks and rejections through faith.
Yeah, I think we're not as much a ritualistic family, but we're a very spiritual family. And there is a sense of faith, something beyond.
Because that's also part of surrender, na?
It is.
क्या
it is.
करना है? हर जगह कहाँ push करते
And
रहेंगे?
I think for me, faith means a lot of gratitude, right? So one of the things I've learned to practice in the last few years especially, and this is only 3-4 years, is a lot of gratitude. I mean, every day I just say thank you. Every day of my life, I will say thank you to a higher power that you've given me this much. I don't think I've ever spoken about this, but now when I walk onto a stage, I will touch the stage and silently say thank you. Or if I'm going on a public platform, I remember when I was giving the speech at IIM Reason, before they called my name, I just looked down and I said, thank you for giving me this platform, because not everyone has the opportunity to have a voice. So I've started saying a lot more thank you, and I think that really, really helps.
How does that feel, having a voice of influence?
It's incredible. It's incredible. It's very, very powerful. It's very, very humbling. It's the cutest thing to go to an airport and meet someone who has written something जो आपने किसी बुरे दिन में ऐसे लिख दिया यार, आपने कोई अपना life experience share किया, to realize how deeply that could have connected to someone and their life. It's incredibly humbling and grateful. And you talked about money, right? So I sometimes travel with people who are far richer than me, and we're at airports, and I always say I'm the most annoying but most fun person to be around at airports, because so many people come talk to me. And these people will travel with me and they'll see so many random people come to me at airports, and they'll just be blown away. And I'm telling you, at that point, money means nothing. Impact means everything. Not that I compare, but it's extremely humbling. I've had guards who come to me and say, आपके कारण SIP करना सीख लिया.
How nice. In that sense, markets have to be inclusive, no? You should get people from every walk of life into the markets.
And markets touch every... I think sometimes we in markets don't realize how many lives we touch. So as I was taking pictures, so many people were asking me, Madam, SIP का क्या करें?
Exactly.
So I was having this cute conversation with photographers on SIP. And yes, you're right, markets can be very inclusive, very democratic, and perhaps our conversation should be more accessible.
Since we've spoken about gratitude and being grateful, I think we have to take a look at your sari collection.
You want to see sarees? Let's go see sarees.
Because you're so grateful about everything, right?
And
you should
I'm
be grateful about
grateful
your great sari collection too.
And many of them
Who
are gifted.
gets to wear so many saris?
And
you're gifted so many of them.
I have got gifted so many vintage things. It's insane. So come.
So let's take a look at it. Chalo.
Welcome to the Sari Mall.
Sari Mall. Are any saris up for sale?
Yeah. So this is one of my favorite. This is a Sambalpuri from Odisha. It's called a doll sari.
It is so pretty.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
This is one of my favorites. This is also black, but this is a Mekhla Chador from Assam. It's not a sari, but it's like a sari.
Okay, nice.
Where if you don't know how to drape, this is amazing to wear.
Okay.
This is from a brand called Sacred Weaves. It's a Banarsi sari.
Oh.
And I come from UP. It's absolutely stunning.
Stunning is the word.
This is a Banarsi rose gold. I have lots of Banarsi pinks. This is my favorite kind of workwear sari, if anyone's looking. These are Coimbatore silks.
Okay.
They drape beautifully. They stick really nicely, and they're very light and simple.
Very light,
so if you're looking to buy a sari, I highly recommend Coimbatore silk. This is from Hyderabad. This is a Narayan Pet sari. This is from my friends at the lovely guys at Taneira.
Okay.
And if you can find it, they have this whole painting of Sita here that they've done. So they said, we've made this sari for you because it symbolizes power.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so it's batik and kantha done together. This someone hand painted for me.
This is such a pretty one.
Look at this. Someone has painted all this.
Do you think now saris have become an expression of feeling connected with your roots?
I think saris actually do a lot of things. One, I think they show you the diversity that is India. I mean, I showed you a bunch of stuff. The other thing is, they just make you stand out so much, right? I mean, I typically go to conversations where there are like 10 black suits and 1 pink sari. So that's very nice. I think you feel very connected to the local place that you go to. My hashtag is Nari in a Sari. Sab pe bhari.
Sab pe bhari. Okay, let's go out.
Let's go.
Thank you so much for showing us your lovely collection. I did a movie many years ago, I played a small part. I played the role of an anchor in that movie called Saas Bahu and Sensex, which was about getting women into the markets, right? Getting women to handle their own finances.
Yeah.
Where do you think we are in that journey, especially with Gen Z? You know, because I still feel like there is this view that money matters should be handled by men. तुम टेंशन मत लो ना, पापा है ना, फिर अच्छा शादी के बाद husband. You know, that's the broad sense. And it's almost instilled in families where, you know, girls are told कि टेंशन मत लो, पैसे की टेंशन मत लो.
पैसे की लो, ये कोई और कर लेगा.
हाँ.
I think we're making progress. Okay, I think we have miles of progress to make, like miles. But I think the younger generation of women has financial independence in terms they're earning their own money. Platforms are available, conversations are starting. And even if you look at the data that's coming out of AMFI, if you look at our own data, younger women are embracing money. But there is a lot of resistance. And I think the resistance is on two accounts. One says, I can outsource this. Exactly what you said, Papa kar lenge, bhai kar lega, father kar lega. And I find this all very absurd because, I mean, I keep saying, ladies, if there's one thing you shouldn't outsource in your life, it's this. Because I've just, you know, it's not cynicism, it's realism. I've heard so many stories. And I think life is uncertain. You know, your loved one could pass away, as we saw in COVID. Marriages don't always work out. Money is something you need to understand. And I've seen really confident women have such bad money experiences, have a loved one pass away, and be able to deal with the emotional grief, but get scared on how to manage something as simple as money, and it breaks my heart. The second is, I think people think money is this very technical and complicated skill set, and I need to be some Warren Buffett and sit on stocks all day to be a good money manager. And I don't think to pick 5 mutual funds, you need to sit on a trading screen and talk stocks all day and understand the economy. You need to know goals, you need to know behavior, you need to know your risk appetite. And women are great savers, man. Like, we all ran our houses, nannies, daddies, so well. It's just saving to investing. It needs to happen. We are a country where we bargain over aloo and pyaz ka kya daam hoga, and we want the free extra kothmeer or dhania or whatever you call it, right? And so these are the small things we're so good at bargaining on. And then you park your money in FD, where post-tax you're not even beating inflation. So the penny wise, pound foolish, or paise wise, rupee foolish, whatever you want to call it, right? Think of the big things that matter rather than the kothmeer.
And when should they start? What would your advice be?
As soon as they can. As soon
First job, first salary.
First job, first salary, and before that, get educated. While you're doing your internships, we don't teach money in school in India, unfortunately. But while you're doing your first salary, just get educated.
You know, we've had such a great conversation, Radhika. I do want to end things on a reflective note. And that is about your own journey. How do you think the Radhika from 20 years ago, what would she make of the Radhika today?
I'll tell you a tiny story. I was sitting with a group of my classmates, and I went to college with a bunch of friends, and we all married each other. So we're a very close-knit group, and we've known each other since 18, 19, 20, exactly that age. And so we were having a conversation that since we graduated at 21, you know, who has changed the most? And most people in the room, especially my husband, concluded it was me. And I felt pretty good about that, because to me it was a sign that I'd evolved. I believe you should continue to be a better version of yourself. And I hope a 20-year-old me would see a much more confident 40-year-old me.
But would she have felt relieved that, oh, that's the Radhika I would become?
Yeah, I think the 20-year-old me would have been like, she's moved on from log kya kahenge. She's found her zone. She's working hard, she's achieving. She's doing it with peace. Peace is a nice thing.
With freedom.
With freedom. She's free, she's peaceful, she's happy. And ambition, happiness, family, all can come together very nicely. You can't figure out how it'll happen over 20 years. But I tell all women this, it does come together.
It does come together.
And stay bullish.
And stay bullish.
Stay bullish on life.
Radhika, lovely having this conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank
very
you for
much
coming home.
for joining us on Finding Freedom. And yeah, lovely house,
Thank
lovely
you.
setup. Thank you for making us a part of your space and your energy.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
As we wrap up this very expansive and candid conversation with Radhika Gupta of Edelweiss Asset Management on this very first episode of Finding Freedom, here are my 5 takeaways from our conversation, from our chat. 1, don't hold yourself back. If you've decided on something, if you've set your mind to something, go ahead and go for it. Find happiness in your life and work, the life and work that you've built for yourself. Third, don't just do a job for money. Try to create impact from the work that you do on society in some shape or form. Own your decision, right or wrong. Start investing and start investing early. First job, first salary. And lastly, stay bullish in life.